Hi, my name is Andy Kong. I'm a program manager on the Visual Studio team. I'm going to show you how to build a modern business application with LightSwitch and walk you through some of the new things we added to LightSwitch in Visual Studio 2013. In this scenario, let's say Contoso Company often sends out representatives to trade shows across the world. At these events, they will set up a booth and show the product to potential customers. They would like to build a mobile app that allows them to quickly capture these potential customers' contact info via their devices. So imagine I'm talking to you at a trade show. I will hand you a tablet for you to enter your contact information and maybe some comments. We will build the app with LightSwitch. Let's create a new project in Visual Studio. You can find the LightSwitch project template for both VB and C#. Since we are building a modern business app that can be accessed on different mobile devices, we will choose the LightSwitch HTML client. Let's name this app Contacts App and click OK. Right now, LightSwitch is creating 3 projects in the solution. There's a server project, which is basically a ASP.NET project used to add tables and connect to data sources. There's a HTML project. It is a JavaScript project that you can define the UI for your app. Finally, there's a LightSwitch project. It ties all the other projects together. We will start by defining a data model. In our scenario, we're working with trade shows and contacts, so we will create 2 new tables for that. But keep in mind that you could also attach to external data sources such as SQL, SharePoint, OData service, or your own custom data sources. We will create a new table called Trade Show. Let's add some fields. We have a title, a show date, and location. Next, we will create another table called Contact and add some field. We have a first name, last name, email. LightSwitch provides a set of business types such as email address and phone number. In Visual Studio 2013, we also added new types such as person and datetime offset. These business types come with specific validation logic and visualizations in both the tooling and runtime. In this case, I will select email address. Let's also add a phone number using the phone number type. And we'll add a field for comment. And we can make these 2 fields as optional. Next, we want to define the relationship between the 2 tables. Click the Relationship button. In the Add New Relationship dialog, I could easily set that up. In this case, we have a one-to-many relationship between contacts and trade show. The dialog even spells that out for me. A contact must have a trade show. A trade show can have many contact instances. I'll click OK, and the designer shows that relationship. Now we have defined the data model. Let's change our focus to designing the UI for the app. We will start by creating 3 screens and define the navigation flow between them. The first screen will show a list for browsing all the trade shows already entered in the database. From there, user can add a new trade show via the second screen. Or the user can tap on a trade show to see a list of contacts with the third screen. Let's create the first screen via the Contacts menu on the Screens node. We'll select Add New Screen. LightSwitch provides 3 screen templates that represent common UI patterns for browsing, viewing, adding, and editing data. In this case, we want a browse screen on trade show. a screen is created for you. In the Screen Designer, you see a screen content tree in the middle that represent the visual elements in the UI. Visual elements are bound to a data member on the left side of the designer. For example, in this screen, we have a list visual showing values from the trade show dataset. We can also choose to render this dataset as a table or a tile list. Let's use a tile list for trade show. We can also customize what will appear on a tile. Let's delete some fields, and we can also make the title larger by changing the font. Next, I want to put an Add button on the screen that shows some UI for me to add a trade show to this list. We'll add the button in the command bar. Here, you can write your own method using JavaScript code for this button, or in our case, we can select a set of commonly used functionalities. In this case, I want to add to the trade shows dataset, so I will select that and click OK. The tool will guide me to create a new screen. Let's name this Add Trade Show. A new screen is created for me. Now back in the Browse screen, we also want to allow user to tap on a trade show and drill into more information. I can wire up the tap action for the list. In Properties window, there is an item tap action I can customize. It will bring up a similar dialog we saw earlier, except in this case, I want to select View Selected. Again, it will guide me to create a new screen. I also want to include the context that's associated with this particular trade show, so I will include that data and click OK. In the newly created screen, you can see View Screen has information about the trade show as well as a context list. We added a table control in Visual Studio 2013, so let's render the context list as a table instead. We can also customize what appears in the table. Let's only show the first 4 fields in the table. And let's hit F5 to run the app and see what we've got so far. The app is loaded using the single-page application architecture with a UI completely rendered by client-side code. Communication with the server is performed using async calls, resulting in a fast and fluid experience. This is the industry trend, and LightSwitch handles all that for you. You can see we have a trade show list and a button to add a trade show. The list is currently empty, so let's add one. One thing to note is that all the layout adapts well to different form factors. Resizing the browser will give you an idea of how the app will look on a phone or tablet. Everything is optimized for touch, but works equally well on a desktop browser using keyboard and mouse. Let's add some value. Now we can tap on the newly created trade show to see more detail. In business apps, it is common to have fields that track when and by whom an entity was created and last modified for auditing reasons. In Visual Studio 2013, LightSwitch does that automatically for you. We can also tap on contacts and see we have a table of contacts for this trade show. It is currently empty. We need to add a new UI for that. So let's go back. Similar to what we did earlier, I will add a button in the command bar. Let's name this Contact Info. We can also wire up the table's tap action to reuse the same screen for editing. Let's run the app again. add a new contact. Since we defined the email and phone number as business types, we'll get some built-in validation logic. If I enter something that's not an email, I will get some error. Let's say I want to see contacts table by default when I tap on the trade show. I want to swap these two categories around. For these types of UI tweaks on the screen, I can quickly make these changes without closing the browser and hit F5 again. I will go back to Visual Studio and I will swap these two sections around, save all, and refresh my browser. Now when I tap on a show, I will see the contacts table by default. And this gives me a very efficient iterative design experience. In our app, we start with a list of trade shows. Let's say we'll also like to add a screen that shows all contacts from all trade shows. But where can we launch that screen? Having a global navigation menu is a common UI pattern in modern business application. Therefore, we added this feature in Visual Studio 2013. To show this, let's first create a screen for browsing all the contacts. We will create a browse screen for contacts. And we'll customize this screen a bit. We'll use table and delete some fields in the table. Now we can customize the global navigation menu via the context menu on the HTML client project. I'll select Edit Screen Navigation. We'll select both browse screens for the menu. Now let's run the app. In the app, we now have a drop-down menu that shows you all the top-level screens. I can jump to the Browse Contact screens, or I can jump to the Browse Trade Show screens directly. Now that we have a Browse Customer screen, let's enable the user to search the customers by name. In the Browse Contact screen, the contacts table is bound to a data set of type contact. We can add a search parameter to that data set. Click Add a Query. In the Screen Query Designer, we can add some filters and wire them up to a parameter. Let's filter by first name and last name. And create a new parameter. We'll name the parameter Search. We'll do the same for last name. We can also mark the parameter as optional. So if no search term is provided, it will show all the list values. Go back to the Screen Designer. You can see now we have a search parameter called Search. We can create a visual for the parameter by dragging it to the screen content tree. We will render the parameter as a text box. And let's run the app. Open the Browse Contact screen. You can see now we have a search box. If I search for AN, it will return the value I just added. If I search for X, it shows nothing. And if I don't have any search terms, it shows the entire list. We have a fully functional app now without writing a single line of code. LightSwitch saves me a lot of time so I could focus on the business logic specific to my app. Let's use a simple example. When a trade show is added, let's say we want to default the trade show date to today's date. We can write some default logic for that. In the Trade Show table, click on the HTML Client tab. This allows you to write JavaScript-based entity code that can run in the HTML client, which is the browser, instead of using C# or VB, which can only be executed on the server. We will write our default logic here. In the write code drop-down, I will select Created. Here, I can just simply say, when an entity is created, I want default the show date to today's date. And if we run the application, click on Add, show date is now defaulted to today's date. Branding is also another important element in business applications. In LightSwitch, I can simply replace the default logos with my corporate logo image. In the Solution Explorer, I can also quickly change the theme of my app by modifying the default.htm. LightSwitch provides two themes, light and dark. You can easily switch to the dark theme by updating the CSS reference. And let's run the app. You can also supply your own theme by customizing it via jQuery Mobile's theme roller. Finally, let's publish the app to the cloud. On the LightSwitch project, let's select Publish. The Publish dialog will walk you through the choices you have to make when publishing an app. I already have a Windows Azure subscription, so I'm going to use that. If you don't have one, you can get a free trial subscription by visiting Windows Azure website. I already have a site provision, so I'll select that. I also have a database provision and click Publish. While it is publishing, let's summarize what we've seen so far. I've shown you a highly productive experience for defining data and screen that enable you to quickly get an app up and running. This allows me to focus on my business logic and get more done. There is a lot more in Visual Studio 2013. Please check out our blogs and forums to get more information. Thanks.